Hi, Brent. Can you hear me okay, Brent?
Hello.
I am having some
There
issues
we
with
go.
I'm having some issues lagging a little bit here. So um,
Okay.
I'm going to have Brandon, Brandon Berger with EDC. He's going
Yeah.
to, he's going to tag team. Am I cutting out on you? Am I cutting out?
No, you're okay.
Okay.
Let me try to put this on my other. Try that. Try saying something there.
Okay. Yeah. Just lagging out now and then. Does that sound any better?
That's better right there.
Okay.
Oh yeah, that's way better.
Yeah. It's getting a little scratchy for me. I was just on a
Uh,
Zoom call with a bunch of people. I was having a real tough time. So yeah, I'm going to have some backup there with Brandon Berger.
okay. Can I rent? I'm not sure that I know. Okay, the share screen button. Can I test that
Yes.
right now?
I have just made you a
Okay.
co-host, so you should be able to, or in the past. So we'll go ahead and get started. So good morning, or what is it, afternoon already, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another Billings Chamber Town Hall. I'm John Brewer, President and CEO of the Billings Chamber of Commerce. And I want to thank our partners for bringing the Town Hall series to everybody, Stockman Bank, Entree Technologies, and Big Sky Economic Development. Today's town hall obviously features Brent Donnelly, a district manager with Montana Small Business Administration, and Martin DeWitt with the SBA, as well as our partners from Big Sky Economic Development in the SBA division there to provide us with some additional tools that we can all use in helping us with funding resources and things of that nature. And Brandon Berger with EDC is going to help me today since I'm having some problems with my connectivity. So between Brandon and I, we'll try to field all the questions that we can to the right people. But we're going to start off with some information from Brent in the SBA office in Montana regarding PPP. And then again, we'll hear from our EDC partners in terms of other financial tools and resources they have available. So Brent, we'll start with you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Let me share my screen here, and we will get going. There, did that work okay?
Yes.
Got
So,
it? Okay. Okay, well, I'll just go ahead and get started. So first of all, I want to thank the John Billings Chamber and all of your members for this opportunity to visit with everyone for a few minutes about some of the small business assistance that's come down through recent legislation through the SBA and starting to be rolled out right now. So I'm just going to start out by kind of running through a few of the quote official PowerPoint slides that we were given to use. And so we will use those, but I've got some additional notes to kind of explain some of the different bullet points in there. And I hope that that will be helpful. As we launch and start talking about PPP, and I'm going to talk about some other things. I mean, just remind folks, we've been here before with PPP. Even though there's some changes to this round of PPP, there's some experiences I think that we've all garnered here in Montana that I hope will make this rollout good and applicable and easy for small businesses to access. And to that end, I just, a big piece of that, a huge piece of that is our lenders in Montana. And so they did a really incredible bang up job on those first rounds of PPP. And if you're going to apply for PPP, you have to do it through the banks, through the approved banks and lenders and non-bank lenders. So to that end, I mean, please, thank you lenders, if any of you are on the call, and to small businesses, work closely with your lenders, because that's really going to be the key to navigating from here, having this discussion today about what the PPP is now, and actually applying for and getting some of those funds. In addition, I wanted to thank the resource partners. John already mentioned our SBDCs, our Veterans Business Outreach Centers, and that. Got some on the phone today from Big Sky EDA, but those are tremendous resources as well. And I'll let Lorene and Brandon talk about those a little bit later on. As far as questions go, I'm going to run through a bunch of information. If there are questions at the end, I will certainly do my best to answer those. Similar to the first round of PPP, we've already seen now 2 interim final rules and some additional guidance that's come down as recently as overnight last night and through the day today. And so some questions, if they get into the details, I may need to do some research and get back to you, but we'll do the best we can. And if we can capture those somehow, John, through a chat or something and forward those on, I'll be glad to do that. So moving on to our next agenda here. We're going to talk about first draw PPP loans, second draw PPP loans, loan forgiveness, and some other items through the stimulus. This slide here, I'm going to go through this one quick. It's kind of what already happened. The PPP program was rolled out early last week. I'm having a hard time seeing it on my end here. There we go. Early last week, and initially was only open to community financial institutions starting on Monday for what they call first draw loans. Wednesday was open for those institutions also for second draw loans. Last Friday, they rolled it out also to banks with assets of $1 billion or less. And today is the big day. All the rest of the banking and lending institutions that are approved to do PPP loans have opened up, and so it's available today. And I think that's the message that we want to make sure that we get out to folks on this call and anybody that's in your networks. Big ask that I have is please share this information. One of the main goals here is to make sure that we know our Montana small businesses know that this is open again, the PPP is available again, and so if they have a need, we want them to know that it's there and how to apply for it if they want to.
Brent, it's John. Are you able to click that bottom right button on the presentation mode there so we can see the full screen? Or does that not work how you're viewing it?
It worked when we tested it earlier, but it does not seem to be working now.
Okay.
And I don't know.
That's okay.
Know what's going on with
We're
that.
following along, just leaning a little bit closer to the screen. That's good.
How about that?
There it is.
There it is.
Okay, we'll roll with this. I can barely hear you, but that's okay. Dates, important dates. If you're taking notes, there's really probably at this point one date on this slide that you still need to pay attention to. It's really important. The PPP program's open through March 31st of this year. So for the next couple of months. If you intend to apply for the PPP, please don't wait till March 31st, of course. For one thing, lenders are going to need a little bit of time to process those applications. And then for another thing, and I'll mention this now, I'll mention it perhaps later as well. You might remember during the first round of PPP, when lenders put applications into the system, they basically immediately got a SBA loan number approval back. There's a slight delay this time. Applicants are going to be run through a system to try to catch some flags for things like fraud or suspicious activity or different things like that. And so there is a little delay between the time the lenders are putting applications in and when they're getting the approval back from SBA. So all of that to say, please don't wait till March 31st. If you have a need and you tend to apply for the PPP program, after we talk through this is the time to start talking to your lender, pulling your documentation together, and working through that process. Okay, so I'm gonna try to talk through what they call now first draw PPP loans and second draw PPP loans. And so there's 2 buckets, if you will, to talk about at this point. And so we'll start out with first draw PPP loans. So to keep it simple, it is a lot what you think it might be. First draw or the first round of PPP, there are a few businesses that are still able to apply for what's called a first draw, and those would be businesses that didn't previously receive a PPP loan. And so the significance there is if you didn't receive a PPP loan previously, or if you were approved for one and you returned all or portion of the funds, or if you're approved for an amount and you took less than the full amount, you can go back to the first draw PPP, and that's still PPP under the rules and regulations of that first round. And so with some additions or some expansions to that, so that second bullet point there says covered eligible expenses are expanded. And so what does that mean? What that means is, in addition to the things you could use PPP for previously, which were payroll costs, mortgage interest, rent, utilities, interest on debt obligations, now businesses can also use those funds for supplier costs on existing contracts and purchase orders, cost of perishable goods, worker protective equipment and adaptive costs. So those costs that you need to keep your workers safe from the COVID, technology operations expenditures, and property damage costs. And so even though this legislation expanded the use or the eligible use of funds, which is important probably for some businesses, one thing that's really important to keep in mind, in order to receive full forgiveness, you still have to use 60% of those funds for payroll costs. So really critical, if you're taking notes, you must use 60% of the funds for payroll costs. Third bullet talks about the covered period, allowing borrowers, businesses to choose their covered period anywhere between 8 and 24 weeks. And so you're not locked into one of those two numbers. You can use anywhere in the middle there, anywhere between the 8 and 24 weeks. Talks about certain borrowers may request an increase to their original PPP loan amount. I mentioned a group earlier of those businesses that either, so that they were approved for PPP, they didn't use all their funds, or they returned a portion of their funds, or there's some different calculations now available for certain borrowers. If you do fall into that bucket, you could talk to your bank about your particular situation, and there's still potential there in some instances to reapply or recalculate your loan amount in some instances. Again, throw out that March 31st date as a really important date. That's the date you must apply for, receive your PPP loan. Also, the bucket of eligible applicants has grown a little bit. So at the top of this screen are what they call newly eligible entities. So housing cooperatives now eligible, destination marketing organizations now eligible, certain 501c6 organizations like Chambers of Commerce eligible, news organizations, so that's TV, radio, newspaper that were previously determined to be ineligible because of affiliation rules, those are now eligible. So in addition to that, still the same bucket or the same group of folks, business entities, partnerships, corporations, sole proprietors, 501c3s, 501c19s, tribal businesses. And remember, there's a 500 employee limit on the first round of PPP. That applies to the first draw PPP. I'm talking about second draw in a minute because there's a different size standard there, but 500 employees or fewer on the first draw PPP. Okay, so pivot over to second draw PPP. And there's some points here. So can I, you might be there saying, okay, I got a PPP loan in the first round, so can I apply again? I still have a need for PPP funds. Can I apply again? Am I eligible? Number one, you have to have previously received a PPP loan and use the funds for eligible expenses. So you have to have used your first PPP loan, have to have 300 employees or fewer, and suffered a 25% reduction in gross receipts. And so what you're going to have to document here is your gross receipts or your gross revenues have been reduced by 25%. Maximum loan amount is up to $2 million. And for most borrowers, the maximum loan amount is going to be 2.5 times the average monthly payroll costs. One thing to note in that first bullet point, it says 2019 or 2020 payroll costs. And so this legislation allows businesses either to take a look at their 2019 numbers, which would have been consistent with what they did on their first round, or they could take a look at their 2020 payroll costs, if that makes a difference, and do the calculations off of them. The business can select. The second bullet point, I think, is going to be applicable here in Montana for sure, In the case of a business that starts with an NAICS code of 72, and so those are described as our accommodation and food services sectors, or restaurants and hotels and that sort of thing, they're actually able to apply for a loan that's 3.5 times their monthly average payroll costs. So instead of the 2.5 factor, those businesses in the NAICS code 72 can use a multiplier of 3.5 times to calculate their maximum loan amount up to $2 million. And then there's a reference here to the form as well. I mentioned this already. So again, you have to have used your first PPP loan, no more than 300 employees. And then that third bullet point, just to provide some context or explanation there, talks about a 25% reduction in gross receipts between comparable quarters in 2019 and 2020. And so a business can take a look at their consecutive, not consecutive, but comparable quarters. So first quarter 2019 compared to first quarter 2020. There's a 25% reduction in gross receipts, then that would make you eligible. You could also look at quarter 2 versus quarter 2, or quarter 3 versus quarter 3. Same with quarter 4 versus quarter 4. You just have to have the comparable quarters, or for simplicity, you can also take a look at the entire year. So you could look at the entirety of 2019 and compare it to 2020, looking for that 25% reduction in gross revenue in order to be eligible for a second draw PPP loan. So that's an overview of the first draw PPP loans and second draw PPP loans. And I want to talk a little bit about loan forgiveness, because this is going to be significant as well. The forgiveness process, first of all, just like applying for a PPP loan, the application for loan forgiveness is also going to be with your lender. And then once the lender reviews the forgiveness application, they process that decision and submit it to the SBA. Bullet point 1 there, we heard a lot about this over the last few months. Idle advances are no longer deducted from forgiveness payment. So for those of you that are either bankers or have gone through or looked at the forgiveness process up to now, you would have learned if you took an EIDL advance, it would have been subtracted or reduced from the PPP forgiveness, leaving no balance. That's no longer the case. So those idle advances do not have to be deducted from the PPP forgiveness. I do not have a timeline, but we're also told that for those folks that have already processed their forgiveness, there will be payments made to reconcile those as well at some point, but we don't have the mechanics or guidance out yet for that. Once we do, we'll send out an update so everyone knows. There's bullet point 2 that talks about taxable income for PPP loans, that they're not taxable. The IRS has put out some guidance on that, and the most recent legislation makes reference to that as well. So IRS should be consulted for all the details on that. The expandable forgiveness expenses. So I mentioned earlier that the eligible expenses have been expanded. Those are still allowable or permissible for any of the first round PPP funds that have not already been forgiven. And a big one here in Montana, the legislation provides for a simplified forgiveness application for PPP loans at the level 150,000 and under. And so if you fall into that bucket, which was a huge percentage of our loans during the first round, the forgiveness process is going to be simplified for both you and the lender. Okay, so I mentioned this at the beginning, I'll mention it again. If you want to apply for a PPP loan, what do? You work with your lender. All the PPP loans are going to go through your lenders. We've got a wonderful group of lenders here in Montana that did such a great job on the first round. Maintain your relationship with your lender and work with your lender on those PPP loans. If you need a lender, you can go to the SBA website, put in some information, you'll get matched up with a lender. And finally, there's a website link there, www.sba.gov/PPP. And so if you're taking notes, that would be another one to write down. It's sba.gov/PPP. That's where updates to the PPP program are going to be. That's where the interim final rules or the rules that govern the program currently will be. Updates to those rules, frequently asked questions. One thing, for example, that just happened today is there was a document published that provided some detailed calculations for a lot of different scenarios and business types on PPP loans, which included not only how to do the calculations, but what documents to use, and even so far as what line and what documents to use. And so there's tools like that that are available now that should help businesses and banks determine their maximum loan amount and what they can apply for. Also, here at the district office here in Montana, looks like I didn't update the phone number there, but our phone number is 406-441-1081. You can always get it through the chamber. I've sent out tons of emails. I'm sure pretty much everybody's got my phone number at this point, or the district office. We'll be working closely with the lenders. We have been working closely with the lenders. We will continue to. I'm sure there'll be updates and mechanics that are going to be presented over time, and we'll continue to work with the lenders. But if you have questions, I would say work through your lender first, but we're also certainly able to help all the lenders and any businesses to the best of our ability with the guidance that's available to help answer your questions and determine if you can move forward or not. So that's my kind of overview on the PPP program. I also want to mention that a couple other things that are coming down. The legislation provided for some changes to what I would call, quote, our regular programs or our regular lending programs. We're waiting for guidance on the implementation of those, but these are the programs that businesses have been using for years and years and years for their capital needs and different things. And so the 7A loan guarantee program or regular loan guarantee program is going to have a 90% guarantee. The SBA 504 program is going to have some temporary elimination of fees and favorable refinance terms. Brandon may be aware of that. I haven't seen the mechanics yet on that, but if Brandon has more information, maybe he could chime in at some point when I wrap up here. Increased aggregate loan amounts for our micro lenders, so that should add some capital stack to the micro lending programs, and it's going to extend the debt relief program. So those are for existing SBA borrowers. That was part of the original CARES Act, and it didn't receive probably as much publicity as like the PPP program did or the EIDL program, but it was quite interesting to me, at least, as I visited with businesses at the end of the last PPP program. They all mentioned, of course, they talked about PPP and that impact of that on their business, but a lot of them mentioned how important that debt relief was as they navigated through last summer and early fall. And so that program is going to be extended. And again, another one of those where it's in the legislation. We're still waiting for the mechanics, but as you can see, the PPP is now rolled out, and so some of this other stuff is going to continue to roll out as well. Another area that folks might have questions is the EIDL program. The loan program, the EIDL loan program, has been extended. You can go to the SBA website and apply for an EIDL loan if you have not done that yet. There was also the EIDL Advance program, which was an amount up to $10,000 that didn't have to be repaid. And the way the SBA did that in the first round is they calculated those grants at $1,000 per employee up to $10,000. There's been $20 billion put into that EIDL Advance program. We're waiting on the guidance on how that's going to be administered or sent out, but keep your eyes open for that and the provisions and parameters around that because there is some additional funding in the EIDL program. And then finally, there's $15 billion in the shuttered venue program. Last week, there was a webinar that provided some introductory information on that. There was a huge demand for the webinar. It sold out, if you will, or didn't have enough seats, but it was recorded. We do have the link to the recording. It's also up on the SBA.gov website, along with some additional information on that program. But if you happen to be an operation or venue that may be interested in applying for that shuttered venue program, one thing to note is as it pertains to the relationship with PPP, there's some language there that says if you take PPP, you wouldn't be eligible for the shuttered grant program. And according to the website there, they use a date of December 27th. And so I guess what I would say to those operations is stay tuned, watch the website for updates on the shuttered grant venue program so you can gather all the information and determine the best course of action for your operation that would provide the most assistance. So with that, John, that's kind of the overview that I had planned to share, and I'll turn it back to you.
All right, thanks, Brent. I think John's having technical difficulties, so this is Brandon. I'll kind of take over here for a minute. But there was one in the chat box too, Brent, for you. It looks like Veronica was asking, how does the PPP work for a sole proprietor or probably a single member LLC for payroll and one employee in themselves? So has that changed, or how does that work for a sole proprietor?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I mentioned a minute ago that there was a document put up today with that specific calculations, including like the tax return lines you use. I'm not sure if that is up on the SBA.gov website, but that would be the perfect resource to go for those calculations. And then be able to determine what your maximum loan amount is. What I'll do, Brandon, and to whomever this question is I'll go ahead and get that sent out maybe to John at the chamber, and he could distribute it to either the chamber membership or the folks that are on this call.
All right, thank you. Does anybody else have any other questions for Brent at this moment? If you do, you can go ahead and take yourself off mute. Oh, there's another one just came in the chat box, but I'll give anyone a second to see if anyone wants to speak up and ask a question.
I'm the one who just put it in the chat box. I can go ahead and just ask my question. So you might have mentioned it, I might have missed it, but when we're looking at our revenue comparisons and looking for this 25% reduction, does the revenue that we did get in 2020 include PPP funding and any other CARES Act grant funding we may have received? So for instance, because I run a nonprofit, we did receive some of the nonprofit funding, and then we also received some innovation grant funding as well. So are we to include those amounts in our revenue, or is it revenue that was not received through government funding and government grant programs?
Yeah, thanks for asking that question. You didn't hear that. That is a question that came up, though. I should have raised that. So the rule specifically says you can exclude any of the first round of PPP money that you received. It doesn't specifically, though, address other CARES Act funding. And that, I know that some of that funding came kind of through the state and different things like that. That's one of those questions that it doesn't specifically say that you could exclude that. So at this point, I don't believe that you can. But I will also say to that is a question that's come up multiple times on some of the internal calls that I've been on. I know that that's something that SBA headquarters is aware of. I am not sure if there's going to be additional guidance posted, or if that would change one way or the other necessarily. But depending upon what your timeline is on considering applying for a new PPP, and if you're able to wait just a little bit, I would keep your eyes open for updates that can either come from me through the chamber or get posted up on the SBA website, because we are expecting some additional FAQ type guidance on a number of different subject matters. And I guess I can't guarantee that that's in one of those subject matters, but I would suspect it might be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Brent right now? If not, we'll move on. All right. Well, hearing none, I'll go ahead and jump in now, and then I'll pass it over to Lorraine after I give a little update. But my name is Brandon Berger. I'm with Big Sky Economic Development, head up our finance department. Here at Big Sky, I primarily deal with an SBA program, the SBA 504 loan program, but we also have some other resources available for small businesses as far as financing. So I'll just kind of touch base really quick regarding this. First of all, with some of the new stuff that come out as part of this CARES Act too, directly related to SBA lending, and Brent did touch on it somewhat, but anyone out there who's currently has an SBA loan, traditional 7A loan or SBA 504 loan, there is going to be the subsidy payments made again on your behalf by the SBA. These payments will begin February 1st and last for 3 months, so February, March, and April of 2021. Your payments will be made by SBA, and it'll be just as they were done back in 2020 when we had the 6 months of subsidy payments. Probably one of the main differences here, if you have a loan that exceeds a monthly payment of $9,000, they are capping the monthly payments right now at $9,000 per month per loan. So I know like the majority of the loans that I deal with, that's not going to impact. There'll be a couple, but for the most part, most borrowers will get that subsidy payment. And kind of as a matter of clarification, that subsidy payment may as well, it's just to be treated just as if you were making a loan yourself. So for instance, on a SBA 504 loan, we don't then add that payment to the back of your amortization or anything. It's treated just as if you've made the loan yourself. So very good benefit for any existing borrowers. Any new loans that are approved, I believe between now and September 28th or 27th of 2021, actually beginning February 1st, I believe it is, for loan approvals. Any that are approved then will also receive a subsidy payments for loans that are approved and funded during that time period. There's also going to be, so there's the 3 months of subsidy payments and other loans that are more impacted by the COVID, and there's certain NICS codes or identification codes for certain industries that have been impacted. Those industries, and in particular, probably the ones that we deal with most are your hospitality industries, restaurants and hotels, but they may be eligible for up to another 5 months of loan subsidy payments beyond the first 3 months. So potential of 8 months of subsidy payments to be made from the beginning with February 1st, 2021 for certain industries. I would just recommend if you're an SBA 504 borrower, contact us. We'll get you some more information. We're going to send out some information on that, or contact your lender or the SBA regarding it on an SBA, on a 7A loan. So again, just as Brent said, not all the regulations and implementation rules have come out on that, but we do know it's going to begin February 1st. Also, there's going to be some fee waivers for new loans approved beginning February for loans approved. Actually, that's backdated to, I believe, December 27th. Any loans approved after that, there's certain fees that are going to be waived on SBA loans. And that, again, will be dependent on whether it's a 504 loan or a 7A on what that deferment or that fee waiver is. Those are kind of probably the main things for SBA 504 borrowers, or those that we deal with. There's been some updates to some of the refinance rules as far as what can be refinanced if you have an existing SBA 504 loan or utilizing the SBA 504 for refinance. And primarily SBA 504 loans, for those of you maybe not familiar with it, is used for businesses, owners that are looking to purchase or acquire commercial real estate for their operation. So it's for owner occupied real estate financing on the 504 loan. That's kind of a little update I wanted to get on the 504 on the additional SBA payments and that as far as the CARES Act. Some of the other tools we do have here at Big Sky for businesses located here in Yellowstone County primarily is we also have what we call a stabilization loan. We are finalizing some of the rules for that as part of this new regulations that have come out. But last year at the beginning of COVID, we did start this program. And what we were doing is applicants could apply for up to $15,000. Those applicants had to have first applied for one of the advanced EIDL loans. And had they done that, then they could apply for our stabilization loan. and received up to $15,000 to be used for working capital or those purposes that'll help you get through the COVID pandemic. So we are looking at doing that again. I'm still working on right now whether or not to have a requirement that you had to have applied for an EIDL loan or not. Probably have that waived. So if you have questions on that or think you may qualify for that, you can contact my office here at Big Sky Economic Development and inquire about that. But that we do have some money still set aside for that. Again, loans up to $15,000. Typically do just a 3-year note at a low interest rate on those loans. So to help those businesses impacted by COVID. That's the primary program we have right now as far as assisting businesses throughout this pandemic, and hopefully maybe there'll be some more to come here in the near future. But from a financing standpoint, that's what we have available through Big Sky Economic Development. We have many other resources here, and one I'd like to let Laureen Hines talk about here in our office. She heads up our Small Business Development Center, but I'll just let Laureen jump in here if she would and kind of give an update for you on what different options and what's available for small businesses, not just here in Yellowstone County, but throughout Montana as far as other resources available. So Laureen, if you don't mind, I'll let you chime in on that.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Brandon, and good afternoon. I'm the Regional Director, Laureen Hines from Billings here, and we have a lot of different programs that we help with. We help with educational programs, and what the SBDC's main purpose is to help people with business planning and cash flow projections when they're either purchasing or starting a business. It doesn't matter if you're starting or you're expanding. We help anyone with that, and we have free resources to do that. So that's a big part of what we do. Through the pandemic, we have been helping people with their EIDL loan applications. We've gone through those, and we have people that are real computer savvy and some that aren't so. And so we've just been either helping get the right information to them, or sometimes actually helping them with their loan application. So that is some of what we do. Through the CARES Act, we've gotten some training money, and so we're putting on some really great trainings. And if you go to our website, which is mtsbdc.gov, we have some of our trainings are listed there, or you can just get a hold of Big Sky EDA and we will send you those things too. Just thinking of any other resources that we have. We don't claim to know everything, but we have lots of different resources. If you need, if you just even need to talk to a good lawyer or an accountant, we have some great mentors that we can put you in touch with, just to get some really good advice and just to help you with your business throughout this pandemic. So thanks a lot. And Brandon, any questions from you or me, or thanks.
You bet, Lorraine, thank you. If anyone has any questions for any of us, please feel free to either put them in the chat box or go ahead and speak up. Again, I encourage you just to use the resources you have available through the SBA or through our office here and the SBDC and the chamber. We all have the resources or the contacts to probably get you to the proper resources for those things as we move through this. So if there aren't any more questions, I'll kind of pause here for a second, see if anyone else has any questions for the group.
And I just want to remind, I guess I didn't say this, the Billings SBDC region covers 9 counties. So we have a big area that we cover, and but there are SBDCs all throughout the state. And so there's someone in your area that can help you if you need any kind of assistance with your business.
Yep. All right, thank you, Lorraine. And Brent, I don't know if you're still on. I'm not sure if the slides or your slide deck can be made available or anything for people. if so, I imagine maybe you can get that over to John. He can share that with his membership. So
Yeah, I'll send that out to John along with our that calculation sheet that just came out for that. One person had asked about that, so we'll just send it out to John and ask him to distribute to everybody on the call. So thank you.
yeah, thank you everyone. John and the chamber, thank you for hosting this. I'm sure there'll be more of these to come as more information comes out from SBA on a daily basis. So thanks everyone, and have a great week.